About 1 hour ago, I was about to give my impromptu speech. There was just one problem. I didn't have a quote, examples, or a note card written. Now, I'm sure that no one said it out loud, but I know we were all thinking in our heads, you had one job, which just so happens to be today's quotation, which we can take to mean that we need to find our goal and our passion in life, but we can't let that consume us. And we're going to see this today through examples, first by examining someone whose goal wrapped him up too deeply, and that was Richard Nixon. Next, by examining someone who had a goal, but it wasn't right for him, Mike Wazowski, before finally examining someone who truly found their goal and succeeded, track athlete Dick Fosbury. So first things first, we can turn back the clock to look at the story of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon always wanted to be president, and he was always on the right path to achieve just that. He ran for the United States House of Representatives, and then later for the Senate in the state of California. And in 1968, after serving as vice president, he finally got to his final destination of the office of president. However, his goal of becoming president, although he had succeeded, consumed him so deeply that he became paranoid. And for his re-election in 1972, he devised more elaborate schemes to spy on the Democratic National Convention and to ensure that he would not lose re-election. And all of this culminated with Watergate. And the reason that Watergate was discovered was because of the wiretaps that Nixon had put in his own office to spy on people that were in his own office and trying, that he thought, to manipulate against him and to cost him re-election. Because he got so caught up in his one job, his one goal, he ended up going to extreme measures, and he ended up causing his own downfall. Of course, he later resigned because of this. We can also take this into the world of fiction with the story of Mike Wazowski, someone who was wholly devoted to his one goal, but it just wasn't the right goal for him, and that was becoming a scarer. In the world of Monsters Incorporated, a scarer is the best job that all monsters strive to be. Someone who goes into the human world, scares little kids, and harvests their screams for energy. And Mike Wazowski, of course, wanted to achieve this goal as well. So he devoted himself to it. This was his job. He studied extremely hard and worked his way up to the best university, Monsters University. But once he got there, he encountered just one problem. He wasn't scary. He was a little green blob with one big eye, and that wasn't what struck fear into the hearts of little kids. So he failed out of college, not because he didn't work hard, but because he wasn't scary. And because he devoted his whole life to this one goal of becoming a scarer, something that was so important to him, he didn't have time or the passion for anything else in life, and he felt unfulfilled. This was until, however, he found his best friend, Sullivan, and they worked together, but after both getting kicked out of college, went into the mailroom of Monsters Incorporated, the company which employs scarers, and eventually worked their way up the corporate ladder to become Mike Wazowski, a scarer's assistant. Still a fulfilling job, but if he had stayed to his one true goal, his one job that he assigned himself, he never would have achieved something that he truly could. And sticking to something that was unrealistic, his not true one job, was something that didn't work. But of course, there is hope, and that we can all find our true job and our true goal and purpose in life. And that, by seeing that, we can examine the story of Dick Fosbury. Dick Fosbury was an athlete in the sport of track and field in the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. He was competing in the high jump event. Now, the conventional wisdom at the time for high jump was that you would run straight at the bar and jump overhead first. Dick Fosbury, however, had a different idea. He devised his own method for high jump. He would run at the bar diagonally and jump over backwards, completely turning the sport on its head. Now, everyone thought that Dick Fosbury was crazy. They called his move the Fosbury flop because they thought it would do just that. But to everyone's surprise, he ended up placing third at the Olympics, and by the 1972 Olympics, it became the gold standard in the sport, and the majority of athletes were doing just the same. Dick Fosbury found his niche, he found his goal, and that was high jump. But not only did he find what truly drove him in life, he innovated it, and he devoted himself to changing the sport for the better. And thankfully, he did just that. And now, to this very day, high jump athletes all across the world do the Fosbury flop. So today we examined the ever important quote, "You had one job," which we can take to mean that we need to find our goal and our passion in life and stick to that, but not let it consume us. And we've seen this through the story of Richard Nixon, whose goal to become president and to stay president consumed him into breaking the law and eventually having to resign as president. Next, we saw this through the story of Mike Wazowski, who devoted himself wholly to one job, but that job simply wasn't right for him because of the way he was born. And finally, examining the story of Dick Fosbury, who found his one job and his one goal, and not only was he good at it, he innovated it completely, changing the way that it was done. So eventually I was able to get a second try. I was able to do my impromptu speech, and hopefully each and every one of you can take this to heart. Find your passion, find your goal, but don't let it consume you.